Took a swing at a wrecking ball and I prayed for my downfall and I found a way to wreck it.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Alright, the main principle behind this tech comes from Azim, also known as Kitten Tamer, a member from our very own community that frequently comes up with cool ideas and stops by my streams. So he recently told me about this. Among many other quirks about Yareli, he has discovered a lot of tricks that can make her a lot more viable survivability-wise and utility for Steel Path contents. But this one takes the cake. Do you notice anything unusual? You might want to look a bit closer. Does this look familiar? Normally you cannot shoot into Yareli's 4. You're fully animation locked during the cast and need to wait until enemies get yeeted before you can DPS. It was such an issue that the big yeet it used to do was actually patched into a tiny yeet instead after sucking everything up. This is the content I live for in the game, ways to find new interactions within our sandbox. While the premise is very simple, it is a massive boon for Yareli mains, or anyone who really just wanted to eat a tweaker 4. This is the closest we will get because I don't think DE is going to do anything about her anytime soon. So what exactly is going on here? It's an animation cancel tactic. Similar to Harrow, how you can cast Covenant, normally you can't move, use abilities, or shoot while casting it. And a lot of people resort to natural talents, but an alternative if you're willing to put up with it on Harrow is to double tap escape. This cancels the cast animation, you are free to move around, and most importantly, go operator even while it's casting. This used to be very useful tech for higher ping client Harrows and Eidolon hunts due to the old client delay going into operator, making the role a lot more difficult to run smoothly than it needed to be, while also saving a mod slot on the frame. But not all animation cancels are made equal. Your thoughts may have shifted to Necrosis 4. No, double tapping escape does not let you skip the massively long shadows of the dead cast animation. There are many other animation cancels in the game, like how casting Volt Speed cancels a lot of things that include melee swing animations, letting you throw contagions without having to actually complete the swing. Today's tech is a bit obscure, but also simple. Dismounting Merulina, that's it. Dismounting cancels any existing animations on Yareli, which includes her casting Riptide, all courtesy of Azim. Thank you. But let's take this further. This has several implications, because you're cancelling the animation to shoot into her 4, and her 4 yeets enemies after it ends, you want as much time as possible to shoot into it. Ironically, this means you do not want to run natural talent on this build since it will shorten the time to DPS before it yeets, since the entire Riptide animation is considered the cast. And the entire point of animation cancels, such as Harrow's Covenant, is to skip the force cast animation anyways. I do want to mention the Yareli cancel only works properly as host, while you can do it as client. You get some really weird and wonky FOV camera angle bugs during the dismount animations that can really throw your aim off, since you have a limited window to DPS the Riptide after dismounting. There's also another problem though. Even though we can make this work, the window to DPS is still extremely small. What things can DPS this window properly to consistently kill all the enemies inside? Don't worry, we spent literally an hour testing on stream to get the answer for you. Unfortunately for diversity, but fortunately for ease of use, the only weapons we found with enough DPS that consistently crowned clear the suck were Trumna's Balefire and Kuva Zarr. Trumna's Balefire has such massive damage it blows them up instantly with the shot itself on contact. But unlike Zephyr's Tornado, it does not self-charge by killing sucked up enemies in Riptide. Perhaps because Zephyr's Tornadoes inherit weapon damage and all associated properties, such as Amalgam Argonac's Metal Auger, when DPSing Tornadoes with daggers to strip armor while not actually being considered damage from the weapon itself. Yareli's Riptide doesn't have any of that, since Riptide is purely a DPS tool with suck potential itself and has no interactions with weapons. But this means you will need to independently charge Trumna between Riptides, which can be troublesome. Any other AoE launcher works quite well for killing, but many of them don't shoot fast enough. Brahma in particular requires charge shots, and you can only get 1, maybe 2 shots in before the Riptide explodes. Envoy works and even passively reloads, but the low fire rate and slow projectile massively limits its DPS, only allowing 2 shots at most to land on the Riptide. Envoy also is normally used for the largest blast radius launcher in the game since it works with Amalgam Firax's body count, a plus blast radius melee mod for Firax that only works on actual primary launchers, and not just AoE weapons in general. This bonus blast radius though is useless when everything is pulled into Riptide. Zarr, on the other hand, shoots fast and has super high DPS. It can consistently dump 4 shots in before Riptide explodes. It's basically the faster Brahma, but with a infinitely worse reload. But that's okay, because we only DPS when we Riptide, so there is downtime to reload. Then here's another problem. Zarr's reload takes forever, and we want as much DPS as possible to take advantage of Riptide. So instead of wasting slots for reload and doing it manually, we piled on holster reload mods. My pistol is a pure stat stick, which is why it's a Mark 1 Fierce. We put both auger mods on for shield gate strats, and synth charge to finish off the set bonus. The other 3 synth mods though, 2 are found on my Panzer, with this basic build, especially because we won't be doing much priming, so Panzer will have to spread viral across the room for us for viral quills. It also gets the typical infinite lives from Devolution, which gives you 0.25 seconds health gate with 30 seconds cooldown with Martyr if it procs, but Tech Assault can prevent Martyr going on cooldown if it procs itself, 60% of the time by not killing your cats. Then the usual radar and vacuum. The final synth mod can be found on my Yareli, so let's look at her. This is a near full support Yareli. We don't got much damage buffs, seeing 40% strength even if I'm using Breach Surge. It's not like we really needed them with Kuva Zarr though. This build is full range to capture as many things as possible with Riptide. Why am I so focused on this new tech though? Because Yareli's Riptide is the highest range gathering ability in the entire game. But it only matters if you can actually kill everything you gather, hence why I chose Zarr. Another interesting note is that hopping on Merulina forcibly holsters your primary and pulls out your pistol. Dismounting will then pull out whatever you had before getting on Merulina. This lets Merulina auto-proc Vigor swap naturally to grant us that DPS boost since Guncio doesn't work on AoE damage of weapons. Synth Reflex is the 4th set mod I mentioned, and it also lets us supercharge a holster speed. For the purposes of this build, you could also run rank 0 to save Forma, since we already have Vigorous swap for the holster bonus. Prime Sure-Footed is still here because we only get it naturally while on Merulina. Last thing you want is to get interrupted by knockdowns or accidentally shooting Zarr when you are dismounted. Besides that, it's all range mods, rolling guard for shield gate survivability, and 265 range. The total 4 auger mod set with brief respite lets her 4 recharge 122 shields, or her entire bar if you have a Decay Dragon Key equipped. So every time you cast it, you cannot be killed. While Rolling Guard has a cooldown of 7 seconds, the 3 seconds invuln gives you enough time to mount on Merulina, cast your 4, dismount, and nuke everything around you, and at that point Rolling Guard is already nearly halfway through its cooldown. Combined with Breach Surge on this build with 47.7 cast radius, it does have line of sight check though. But a still 10.24 seconds blind, even at 64% duration, you shouldn't really have any issues surviving. Aqua Blaze isn't really necessary to be casted since it only lasts 29 seconds, but it can stagger lock any melee units trying to get to you. Arcane Acceleration is important to let us spam Zarr even faster, and Energize to get our energy back. I would recommend pairing this with Zeneric for Wellspring due to our energy usage, as while we have 300 energy cap and 160 efficiency, we are still casting Merulina and Riptide for 50 energy every time we do a DPS rotation. And now for the Kuva Zarr. Actually, before we get to that discussion, go to your settings real quick. If you want to use this build for maximum DPS, change your fire weapon to scroll down. I would also recommend changing the secondary fire to some less used button so you don't accidentally change Zarr to barrage mode while trying to spam the cannon fire since barrage is poop in this Yareli setup. Just remember to fix your settings if you stop using this loadout. Anyways, the Zarr build. This is a 60% Toxin Progenitor Kuva Zarr. It lets me make viral with just a single cold mod, Prime Cryo Rounds. Why Prime Cryo Rounds instead of a 60-60 cold mod? Well, it lets us still kill trash fodder with big viral damage and not need to rely on Slash. Why are we going viral Slash though? Because you may fail to kill the enemies before they get yeeted, but the sheer Slash procs created during the tight suck with a little AoE fall off will ensure they die, and thus scales higher than Corrosive for this purpose. Prime Firestorm is completely optional in the setup and serves more as utility if you need to shoot it without Riptide. You can otherwise replace this mod with Amalgam Serration for the sprint speed bonus and base damage, though the lack of base damage is also supplemented by Vigorous Swap, remember that. The typical crit mods and Galvanized Multishot are self-explanatory, and we double dip bleeds with Primed Banes for 2.4 times more damage. Hunchy Munitions is obvious, and Vile Acceleration stacked with that Arcane Acceleration arcane dwarfs the fire rate penalty of critical delay. Maximizing fire rate is important because it allows us to spam as many shots as possible into Riptide before it explodes. Vigilante supplies, since Zarr has tiny reserve ammo capacity and also the set bonus for extra crit tiers. Merciless, since we'll be spamming Zarr blindly into the vortex, so it's the only arcane that will actually stack base damage properly. Finally, I bring a glaive melee. Why glaive instead of Praedos? Because parkour speed isn't that important on this loadout, and you'll be moving around a decent amount on Merulina, but the actual freedom of directional movement, that's why I picked glaives. If you didn't know, glaives and certain sword and shields sometimes, but generally just glaives, allow you to cancel slams while in midair. You can use this to vertically position yourself as needed and get between tiles better. It also lets you do weird stuff like this. So if you aren't looking for absolute speed that the Praedos provides on parkour velocity and prefer directional freedom, this is something glaives can offer. It doesn't matter what glaive you use, just pick one, whichever one you're most comfortable with. You also actually need a melee on the build because you will be meleeing to holster Zarr after you shoot into Riptide, so don't go not equipping anything. This will let the synth set to activate and reload 20% of the Zarr per second, meaning after 5 seconds it will be full again, which gets around the slow reload of Zarr. The time spent pulling out the Zorus with quick melee, going to the next group of enemies, getting on Merulina, casting your 4, getting off with Merulina, and then finally pulling out your Zarr again is more than enough to reload those 5 shots. Also, pay attention to my HP bar when I dismount Merulina to DPS the Riptide. Notice how it's gray? Yeah. Merulina gives you iframes when you dismount. The entire DPS window of nuking Riptide with my Zarr, I'm invincible. Essentially, once you cast your 4 and dismount to start the DPS rotation, nothing in the game can kill you since the iframes end after you've already shot Zarr and the Riptide exploded. So much survivability all crammed together onto this build. I'm sure you'll have fun with it even if I'm just using a Kuva Zarr meta build. Enjoy, and thanks again to Azim for showing me the dismount tech. If this is your first time watching, feel free to leave a like, or better yet, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. 79.5% of you are not subscribed. I'm trying my best to get you new information out always, as soon as possible. Like I've done with covering the new Angels update. Stick around if you want to see interesting memes and builds on a nearly daily basis. You don't want to miss out on any of that, do you? That'll be it for this video. Thank you all for watching, and see you all next time.